People assume that if a lake has boats, docks, and vacation homes around it, someone else owns it. That's exactly what everyone believed about Silver Pine Lake, especially the HOA. My name is Ethan Carter, and for most of my life, I worked as a civil engineer designing bridges and waterfront projects across the country. While everyone else chased promotions and luxury homes, I spent my weekends visiting my grandfather's quiet cabin on Silver Pine Lake. Grandpa Henry always smiled whenever people referred to it as the community lake. "They'll be surprised one day," he'd say with a grin. I never understood what he meant. When he passed away at 91, I inherited everything he owned. The cabin, the surrounding forest, several storage buildings, and one thick leather folder labeled property records. At first, I assumed it contained nothing more than tax receipts. Instead, it contained something that changed everything. According to the original deeds dating back almost 80 years, my grandfather had purchased not only the shoreline surrounding the cabin, but the legal title to the lakebed itself. The entire lake. Over 800 acres of water. Water rights. Docking rights. Commercial use rights. Everything. I spent 3 days with an attorney making sure there wasn't some mistake. There wasn't. The county had confirmed every document. Somehow, over the decades, everyone simply forgot. Developers came. Neighborhoods were built. An upscale HOA expanded around the western shoreline. Restaurants opened. Boat rental companies appeared. Eventually, someone built an enormous luxury marina. Nobody questioned it. Everyone assumed the lake belonged to the county. Nobody bothered checking, including the HOA. The marina itself looked like something from a travel magazine. Nearly 100 slips. Luxury yachts. Fuel docks. A waterfront cafe. Boat repair services. Private security. According to county business filings, the marina alone was valued at over $3 million. Every summer weekend it was packed. I wasn't interested in causing problems. Honestly, I barely used the lake myself. I simply wanted to renovate Grandpa's cabin and enjoy retirement. That changed the second I met HOA President Linda Marshall. Everyone called her Karen behind her back. Within 24 hours of moving in, she drove a brand new white SUV onto my gravel driveway. Without introducing herself, she climbed out holding a clipboard. "You violated HOA appearance standards." I looked around. My cabin isn't inside your HOA. It affects neighborhood values. It still isn't your property. She ignored me. "Your dock needs repainting." "No." "Your boat shed needs replacing." "No." "The grass exceeds community standards." I smiled. "I own my grass." Her face tightened. "We'll fine you." "You can't." She laughed. "We fine everyone." That should have been the end of it. Instead, she became obsessed. Every few days another letter appeared in my mailbox. Warnings. Violations. Threats. Fines totaling nearly $12,000. I threw every one into the fireplace. 2 weeks later she arrived with 2 security guards. "We're removing your dock." I folded my newspaper. "Excuse me. It's not HOA approved. You don't own this property." She crossed her arms. "We control the shoreline." I couldn't help laughing. "No, Linda. You'll regret laughing." One guard stepped toward my dock, carrying bolt cutters. I stood. "Touch one board, and you'll be trespassing." Linda pulled out her phone. "I'll call the sheriff." "Please do." Instead, they left. For almost a month I heard nothing. I figured she'd finally realized she had no authority over my land. I was wrong. One Saturday morning, I walked down to the water carrying a cup of coffee. Dozens of tourists were wandering across my shoreline. Children were swimming from my dock. Jet skis were tied to my pilings. People were eating lunch on my private beach. Confused, I walked toward the marina. A large wooden sign stood beside the entrance. HOA Marina Expansion. Public beach access. Day parking, $25. The map included my property, not beside the marina. Inside it, my cabin was labeled Future Waterfront Recreation Area. I stared in disbelief. A dock attendant smiled. "Beautiful place, isn't it?" "What is this map?" "Our expansion project." "Who approved it?" "The HOA." "What about the property owner?" He laughed. "The HOA owns everything around here." I looked directly at him. "No, they don't." He shrugged. "Take it up with Mrs. Marshall." I did exactly that. Linda was standing outside the Marina Cafe, giving instructions to contractors. When she saw me approaching, she smiled. "I figured you'd come eventually. You've opened my shoreline to the public. It benefits the community. You never asked. We didn't need permission." I unfolded the county survey I'd brought with me. You built your expansion across my property. She barely glanced at it. Fake paperwork. It came from the county recorder. I don't care. You should. She stepped closer until we were only a foot apart. This marina makes millions every year. It won't if you keep trespassing. She laughed loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. You're one old cabin owner. I'm the landowner. No, I'm the HOA president. People around us chuckled. Linda loved having an audience. She pointed toward the security office. Escort him off HOA property. 2 guards approached. I calmly looked at both men. You might want to verify who owns this shoreline before putting your hands on me. Neither moved. Linda grew impatient. Do your jobs. One guard quietly asked me. Do you actually have paperwork? I handed him a certified survey. He read it for almost a minute, then looked toward Linda. This says. She snatched it away. It says nothing. Then she ripped the survey in half. Right in front of me. The crowd gasped. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply smiled. You just made this much easier. Her confidence never faded. You have until tomorrow morning to remove yourself from HOA property. I nodded once. Tomorrow morning. That afternoon, I drove straight to my attorney's office. 3 hours later, certified notices were prepared. One for the HOA, one for the marina operator, one for every commercial tenant leasing waterfront space. Each notice contained the same sentence. Effective immediately, permission to occupy, dock, or commercially operate on privately owned lake property is revoked. The following morning, at exactly 8 a.m., licensed contractors arrived with heavy steel barriers. They began locking the only entrance to the marina. Employees stood frozen. Boat owners shouted in confusion. Linda came sprinting across the parking lot screaming. What are you doing? The contractor calmly handed her the court-authorized notice. She crumpled it and threw it onto the ground. You can't close my marina. Before anyone could answer, she pulled out her phone, dialed 911, pointed directly at me, and shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. Police. Someone is illegally shutting down my $3 million marina. The flashing blue lights appeared less than 10 minutes after Linda's frantic 911 call. 2 sheriff's deputies pulled into the marina entrance while a crowd of confused boat owners gathered behind the newly installed steel barriers. Everyone assumed I was about to be arrested. Linda certainly did. She marched toward the deputies before they had even stepped out of their patrol vehicles. There he is, she shouted, pointing straight at me. He's blocking access to our marina and destroying our business. Deputy Mark Sullivan held up a hand. Ma'am, let's slow down. Tell me exactly what's happening. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association, Linda said confidently. This man hired contractors to shut down private property. The deputy turned toward me. Sir, do you own these contractors? I hired them. Why? Because they're standing on my property. Linda laughed so loudly that several people joined in. His property? She scoffed. He's completely delusional. I calmly handed Deputy Sullivan a folder. Inside were certified copies of my deed, the lake survey, the title history, and the attorney's notice that had been served the previous afternoon. The deputy didn't rush. He read every page carefully. His partner watched over his shoulder. Neither officer spoke for nearly 2 minutes. Finally, Deputy Sullivan looked at Linda. Do you have documentation showing the HOA owns this marina property? She folded her arms. We've operated here for years. I asked for ownership documents. The marina pays taxes. That's not the same thing. She frowned. Our attorney handles all that. Can you contact them? She confidently dialed her attorney. Within minutes, a sharply dressed lawyer arrived carrying several binders. He greeted Linda with a reassuring smile. Don't worry, he whispered. We'll clear this up. He reviewed my paperwork. Then he opened his own files. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. His confident smile slowly disappeared. He flipped through survey maps again, compared parcel numbers, checked legal descriptions. Finally, he quietly asked me, May I see the original survey one more time? I handed it over. He studied it in silence. Then he looked at Linda. We have a problem. She rolled her eyes. No, he has a problem. The attorney shook his head. No, we do. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? He lowered his voice. The HOA owns the marina buildings. She smiled again. I knew it. But, he paused. The buildings are sitting on lease structures attached to privately owned submerged land. She blinked. What does that mean? It means the lakebed belongs to Mr. Carter. Silence spread through the crowd. Someone actually whispered, "What?" The attorney continued. The original developer never purchased water rights. Linda stared at him. Impossible. It appears every developer after that assumed someone else had. Deputy Sullivan looked back at me. So your attorney revoked permission for commercial use? Correct. And these barriers are preventing additional trespass? Exactly. The deputy nodded. So far, everything appears lawful. Linda exploded. This is ridiculous. She grabbed the attorney's arm. Tell them they're wrong. I can't. She pointed toward the marina. We spent millions building this place. He sighed. That doesn't automatically transfer property ownership. People throughout the marina began pulling out their phones. Word spread almost instantly. The cafe owner rushed outside. What's happening? The fuel dock manager followed. Boat rental employees gathered nearby. Every business owner asked the same question. Are we closed? My attorney, David Brooks, arrived moments later carrying another stack of documents. He politely introduced himself to everyone. I represent Mr. Ethan Carter. Then he spoke clearly enough for the entire crowd to hear. Effective immediately, all commercial operations on Mr. Carter's privately owned lake property must cease until legal authorization is obtained. Groans echoed through the marina. The cafe manager buried her face in her hands. The boat rental company immediately began issuing refunds. Luxury yacht owners argued with employees. Vacationers demanded explanations. Within an hour, social media was flooded with videos titled, "Luxury Marina Suddenly Shut Down." Local news stations arrived before lunchtime. A reporter approached me with a microphone. "Sir, are you responsible for today's closure? I enforced private property rights. Were you trying to shut down local businesses?" "No." "What were you trying to do?" "I was trying to stop people from using my property without permission." The reporter turned toward Linda. "Mrs. Marshall, did the HOA know the lake was privately owned?" She forced a smile. "We're still investigating." Before she could walk away, another reporter asked, "Did your HOA approve expansion onto land it didn't own?" No comment. By late afternoon, county officials arrived with survey equipment. Unlike everyone else, they didn't argue. They simply measured, compared maps, verified monument markers that had been placed decades earlier. For hours later, the chief surveyor approached both attorneys. His conclusion was painfully simple. The deed is correct. He pointed across the water. The legal lake boundary follows these original coordinates. Then he pointed directly beneath the marina. This entire structure extends over privately owned lakebed. Linda looked as though she might faint. She demanded another survey. Then another. The county agreed. 3 independent surveyors reviewed the records over the next week. Every single one reached the same conclusion. The marina had been operating on my property for nearly 15 years. Without permission. Without a lease. Without any recorded easement. The financial consequences became immediate. Insurance companies questioned coverage. Banks financing marina operations requested emergency meetings. Commercial tenants worried about their leases. One by one, businesses contacted my attorney asking whether temporary agreements could be negotiated. I wasn't interested in revenge against them. Most had no idea what had happened. Several cafe employees even apologized for how I had been treated. I appreciated that. But the HOA leadership was different. Instead of admitting their mistake, Linda doubled down. She called a special HOA meeting. Hundreds of residents attended. I watched the live stream later that evening. Standing at the front of the clubhouse, Linda confidently declared, "This is nothing more than harassment." She claimed my documents were misleading. She insisted the HOA would win easily in court. The audience applauded. Then someone stood up in the back of the room. It was an elderly resident named George. He had lived beside the lake for over 40 years. "I have a question," he said. Linda smiled. "Of course. If Mr. Carter doesn't own the lake, why did 3 county surveyors say he does?" The room became very quiet. Linda stumbled through an answer. George asked another question. Did the HOA board ever verify ownership before spending $3 million? No answer. Another resident stood. Did our dues pay for lawyers without checking property records first? More silence. A third homeowner raised his hand. Are we financially responsible if the HOA loses? The room erupted. Neighbors who had supported Linda only minutes earlier began demanding financial records. Board members argued among themselves. One quietly walked out. Another refused to answer questions from reporters waiting outside. By the end of the night, panic had replaced confidence. The next morning, my attorney received official notice. The HOA had filed a lawsuit against me anyway, seeking an emergency court order to reopen the marina. David read the complaint twice before smiling. They've made a very expensive mistake. What do you mean? They've asked the judge to examine every deed, permit, survey, construction contract, and financial record connected to this marina. And he closed the folder. If those records say what I think they say, this case is about to become much bigger than a marina. The county courthouse was packed on the morning of the hearing. Reporters lined the hallway before the doors even opened. Residents from the HOA filled nearly every seat in the gallery. Marina employees, business owners, and boat owners waited anxiously, hoping the judge would allow the facility to reopen. I took my seat beside my attorney, David Brooks. Across the aisle, Linda Marshall entered with the HOA board and a team of lawyers. She still looked confident. She smiled at reporters. She waved to several homeowners. It was obvious she believed this hearing would end in her favor. At precisely 9 a.m., Judge Eleanor Watkins entered the courtroom. Everyone stood. Once the courtroom settled, the judge looked toward the HOA's attorney. You requested emergency relief. Proceed. The attorney confidently approached the podium. Your Honor, the defendant has unlawfully shut down a community marina serving hundreds of residents and visitors. We request an immediate injunction restoring access while ownership issues are resolved. The judge nodded. And what evidence do you have that your client owns the submerged property beneath the marina? The attorney hesitated. We have decades of uninterrupted use. I asked about ownership. He shuffled through several folders. We have tax records. Ownership. We have operating permits. Ownership. Silence. Judge Watkins slowly removed her glasses. So you cannot produce a deed? No, Your Honor. She turned toward David. Mr. Brooks. David stood calmly. We have certified deeds dating back 80 years, 3 independent county surveys, title records, tax documents, and testimony from the county recorder. He placed several binders on the evidence table. The judge spent nearly 30 minutes reviewing them. Finally, she looked directly at Linda. Mrs. Marshall, did the HOA verify ownership before authorizing construction? Linda stood. We believe the lake was public. Did you verify that belief? No. Did anyone on the board verify it? No. The judge looked disappointed. So your organization invested approximately $3 million. Without confirming who owned the property? No one answered. The courtroom became silent. Then the county recorder was called as a witness. He explained how the original lake deed had never changed ownership. The property had remained in my grandfather's name for decades until it legally transferred to me through probate. Next came the chief surveyor. He displayed enlarged maps on a courtroom screen. Colored lines showed every legal boundary. The entire marina extended over privately owned lakebed. There was no ambiguity, no missing paperwork, no disputed measurements, just a mistake that had gone unnoticed for years. Then David introduced something no one expected: construction contracts, building permits, invoices, emails, meeting minutes from the HOA board. One email immediately caught the judge's attention. It had been written 6 years earlier by an engineering consultant. David read it aloud. Before expansion, ownership of submerged land should be confirmed through the county recorder to avoid future legal disputes. The courtroom became so quiet that I could hear pages turning. David looked at Linda. Did the HOA ever follow this recommendation? She stared at the floor. No. Another email appeared. This one was even worse. A board member had written, "The survey costs too much. Everyone knows the HOA controls the lake anyway." Several residents gasped. One elderly homeowner shook his head in disbelief. Another buried her face in her hands. Judge Watkins leaned forward. So the board intentionally chose not to verify ownership? Linda's attorney quickly objected. The judge overruled him. The documents speak for themselves. David wasn't finished. He introduced photographs showing the HOA expanding public beaches, boat slips, fuel docks, and parking areas onto my shoreline over several years. None of it had been approved by the actual property owner. Finally, David called me to the witness stand. Mr. Carter, before closing the marina, did you attempt to resolve this privately? Yes. How? I spoke directly with Mrs. Marshall. What happened? I showed her certified surveys. And Linda quietly answered, "Yes." "Why?" "I believe they were fake." Judge Watkins placed the papers on the bench. Belief is not evidence. After a brief recess, the judge returned with her ruling. This court finds that the plaintiff has failed to establish any ownership interest in the submerged property beneath the marina. She continued, "The defendant possesses valid titles supported by recorded deeds and multiple independent surveys." She paused before delivering the decision everyone had been waiting for. The request to reopen the marina is denied. A wave of whispers spread through the courtroom, but the judge wasn't finished. The court further orders that all commercial operations extending onto Mr. Carter's property cease immediately unless authorized by written agreement. Linda's shoulders slumped. Then came the final blow. Because the HOA proceeded with construction without verifying ownership and ignored multiple warnings, this court awards reasonable attorney's fees and costs to the defendant. The courtroom erupted. Reporters hurried into the hallway to file breaking news. Outside, television cameras waited as residents exited the courthouse. Many homeowners were furious. Not at me, at the HOA board. Within days, the board called an emergency meeting. Nearly every homeowner attended. One by one, residents stood to speak. "You wasted our dues. You ignored legal advice. You embarrassed this community." When the votes were counted, Linda and 3 board members were removed from office. A new board immediately contacted my attorney. Unlike their predecessors, they came with a different attitude. No threats, no demands, just an apology. Their new president spoke first. "Mr. Carter, we're sorry. We'd like to negotiate a proper lease." I listened carefully. The marina employed dozens of local people. Closing it forever would hurt families who had done nothing wrong. So I made one condition. The marina can remain. The room brightened. But no HOA authority extends onto my property. Ever. They agreed immediately. A long-term commercial lease was signed. The marina paid fair rent for using my lake. Part of that income funded shoreline conservation, improved boat safety, and public cleanup projects. Local businesses stayed open. Employees kept their jobs. Residents finally had an HOA board that respected both the law and property rights. As for Linda, she quietly sold her home a few months later. No farewell party. No speeches. Just a moving truck leaving the neighborhood early one morning. I watched it disappear from the porch of my grandfather's cabin. The same porch where he used to smile whenever someone called Silver Pine Lake the community lake. Now I finally understood why. Some truths stay hidden for years. But property records have a way of speaking for themselves. And sometimes, the loudest person in the neighborhood discovers that the quiet owner of the old cabin has held the real title all along.